57 ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಎಷ್ಟು?
57 ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಇನ್ನೂ ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ, ಹೇಳ್ತೀಯಾರೆಲ್ಲ.
ನೀವು ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಚಟ್ಟಿ ಇರೋದು
ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿ.
ನಾನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ವೆಲ್ಕಮ್ ಮಾಡಿ.
ಬರಲಿ, ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಂದ ನಾವೇನು ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಹೇಳೋದು ಸರ್? ನೀವು ಸರಿ.
60 ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಇಲ್ಲ, ಲಿಂಕೆ ಹೋಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಲಿಂಕೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ ನಾವು.
ಏನು ಸ್ವಾಮಿ, ಚಾರ್ಜರ್ ಇದೆಯಾ ಇದ್ರದ್ದು? ಸ್ಯಾಮ್ಸಂಗು ಇಲ್ಲ, ತೊಗೊಬರ್ತೀನಿ. ಹಾಂ, ಓಕೆ, ಬೆಸ್ಟ್. ಯಾಕಂತಂದರೆ ಹೊರಟೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು
ಬಂದ್ರಾ? ಸೆಂಡ್ ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಆಗಿರ್ತದೆ 2 ಮಿನಿಟ್ಸ್. ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಬರಲಿ ಅಂತ.
ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟವಾಗಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಾಕು.
ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಮಾತಾಡ್ಸ್ತೀರಾ ನೀವು? ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ
ನಾವು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿರೋದ್ರೆ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ತೋರಿಸ್ಲಾ?
ಆಗ್ತೇನಾ? ಹಾಂ. Yes, good afternoon, one and all. We'll start with the afternoon session on cybersecurity by Dr. Anil Kumar KM. It's my privilege to introduce Dr. Anil Kumar KM to you all. Anil Kumar KM is working as an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Sri Jaichamarajendra College of Engineering, JSS Science and Technology University, Mysuru. He obtained his M.Tech in Computer Network Engineering from NI, PhD from University of Mysore, postdoctoral from Deccan University, Australia. He has 22 years of teaching experience. Dr. Anil Kumar KM is expertised in algorithmic approach to problem solving, data structure, C++, data communication, computer network, Java, J2EE, cryptography and network security, etc. His area of interest is text mining, sentiment analysis, data mining, opinion mining, web mining, data analysis, computer network. Sir has organized and coordinated several conferences, workshops and faculty development programs. He was elected as member of Computer Division, Institute of Engineers, Mysore Local Centre Committee between 2016 to 2018. He was nominated as member for the Research and Innovation Council, JSS Science and Technology University between 2017 to 2020. He has delivered number of technical talks in various institutions. Anil Kumar has published more than 44 research papers in various reputed peer-reviewed journals. Even he has received Best Paper Presentation Award for some of his research papers. Dr. Anil Kumar has received number of research project grants from different funding agencies like AICT, BTU, VGST, IBM, MHRD, etc. I welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vinod. Thank you for this opportunity given to share my few experiences regarding cybersecurity. Also, this is the need of the day, and every youngster entering this particular the university, they should be aware of cyber and cybersecurity. So that's a wonderful initiative that's taken by the university officers to have a talk on cybersecurity as part of the induction program. So again, this is a kind of a challenge for me as well, because most of the students as well as the participants would be, probably after lunch break, it becomes very difficult for anybody to engage a session. So it's a kind of a challenge for me as well as for you to listen to the talk. But I believe this particular talk would be very interesting for you because every day we use what is known as mobile phones and the internet and other things. So basically this will help us to understand the intricacies, and it will help us to understand how cybersecurity, or for that matter cybercrime, plays a very important role in our daily lives. Okay. So to start with, what I'll be talking about is, I'll be talking about the cybersecurity, I'll be talking about cybercrime, I'll be talking about something called the reasons for cybercrime, and also some profile about cybercriminals, and mode and manner in which they commit such acts, and classification of cybercrimes, and then also I will be talking about what is known as the case studies, and then finally I'll be talking about how we can prevent cybercrimes from from happening to me or you, and also we'll discuss something about the challenges. So when we talk about cybersecurity, what exactly is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is basically the practice of protecting systems and networks and the programs from what is known as the cyber criminals. Now basically I've used the word called criminals because the person who is responsible for doing things that is not conducive to a particular system, they are the ones who actually indulge in some kind of practice. So therefore, cybersecurity is basically a practice of protecting things from the cyber criminals. In 2020, it is estimated that around 3.86 million US dollars globally, that is the amount of data that was breached in the sense it can be stolen, or it can be something like attacked. So amount worth like something like 3.86 million was incurred. And similarly, it was also reported in the newspaper that around 8.64 million US dollars worth data breach happened in United States. And when we talk about these costs, so this cost includes what is known as the expense in discovering and responding to those kind of breaches. So for example, the attack would have taken place on a particular data server, and then the task of finding such an attack, and the task of rectifying the aftermath of an attack, all the events that have taken place after the attack. So the task of cleaning up all those things. So the cost includes discovering as well as the cleanup job. And at the same time, when an attack takes place, most of the important installations, for example, it could be the data server, or it could be something like the machines which are running 24/7, so they actually come to a kind of a standstill. So we call it as something called the downtime. So all these results in a lot of revenues. For example, if you take what is known as the e-commerce sites. So e-commerce sites, they have to be available 24/7, and if in case there is a kind of an outage, when I say outage, if the services are disrupted, so then what happens is, they will not be available to many customers. As a result, those e-commerce sites will lose what is known as their business. So that is what we mean by loss of revenue. And at the same time, the most important thing is, the reputation damage that can happen. For example, if an e-commerce site is down, for some time, and if the frequency of it happens, then the customer will never visit those kind of a sites. So that is what we call as the reputation management. So the cyber security, is a very important thing that has become a part of every organization today. So they understand, the people in the organization, they understand the need for what is known as the Department of Cybersecurity to be created, so that they can assess the vulnerabilities, they can assess things, so that all these things can be can be put on hold. And there is we know what is known as there is a company called as the PricewaterhouseCoopers, or popularly known as PwC. So basically what they do is, it's basically an audit kind of a company, and they estimate that, they have given some kind of a statistics, and the statistics are very interesting. They say that 69% of the consumers believe that companies that they are in touch can be vulnerable of being hacked or attacked by cyber criminals. Say for example, today we are using, for example, we are using different services. For example, it could be what is known as your mail, or it could be e-commerce sites that you visit. So basically we rely on many third-party service providers for your mails and for your e-commerce needs and so on. So in order to, but how reliable they are. So therefore the survey says that 69% of consumers, they believe that these companies can be very, very vulnerable, very weak, because sometimes they can be weak because you would be having, or you would be storing a lot of data, and any kind of any kind of compromise on these servers, or the third-party servers, or the third-party the organization that provides you the service, if they are compromised, then that would definitely have some kind of an impact on you as well. So it also says that 87% of the consumers, they say that they are willing to walk away and take their business to somewhere else because if they are not confident about the third party. For example, if somebody is giving you a kind of a service, let's say it's something like an email service. So today there are many people, or many key players, who are providing what is known as the email services. For example, it could be Gmail, or it could be Yahoo. Many such players are there. But if in case you're not confident about one particular organization or one particular vendor, so then the survey says that 87% of the consumers, they are willing to walk away from that particular organization to somebody else. So this is one of the report that was published by PwC. And recently, like for example, in the Hindu publication that is dated 27th September 2021, it says that around 62% of SMBs, we call them as small medium businesses, so they say that they have incurred some kind of losses of more than 3.5 crores. And while some people say that around 13% of the respondents lost over something like 7 crores because of cyber related issues in last year alone, as per the survey conducted by Cisco. So Cisco did conduct a survey, and according to this survey, so these are some of the statistics that was published in the the daily newspaper, The Hindu. And also, it also gives another interesting statistics, and that statistics is like in India, for example, we have something called the malware attacks. So I'll be talking about what exactly is this malware attacks and so on in the coming slides. But malware attacks, it's found that 92% are infected, in malware attacks affect 92% of the SMBs. And again, there are different types of attacks, like for example phishing. I'll be talking about what exactly phishing, that is 76%. And then there are other related issues such as the 38% suffer other cyber related incidents. And 36% or ranked cybersecurity solutions was not able to detect as well as prevent some kind of cyber attacks. So there are different solutions in the market. So according to this particular study that was published, 36% of the cybersecurity solutions that are available in the market, it was not able to detect or prevent these kind of attacks. And again, there are some interesting statistics that was put, like for example, the small business organizations, they had some kind of data breaches in the sense some of their data was either stolen or some compromised. Like for example, 73% with respect to their emails and 71% with respect to their employee data. And then you have something called 74% intellectual properties. It could be their design, it could be the code that was stolen, and 75% of something called the financial information. And all these, and again at the same time, 73% said that all these things, it disrupted their operations. And again, continuing with the survey, 76% admitted that all these kind of activities have some kind of an impact on their reputation, because basically you are an organization. SMBs are small medium businesses. So when the businesses are heavily hit by these kind of an attacks, so they have their the operations suspended, or the operations will not take place. As a result, what happens is it will definitely have an impact on their reputations. And 70% said that definitely they have lost the customers' trust. And in addition to it, there are some SMBs who are struggling. For example, 97% they say that they don't understand cybersecurity, the technology behind cybersecurity. So because you have too many technologies, and cybersecurity is also a kind of technology, so they don't understand about it. So therefore 97 felt that there are too many of kind of technologies, and they find it very difficult to integrate all of these. And there is some kind of a myth, some kind of a myth in cybersecurity. This is something courtesy of IBM. So I just I use this particular topic from IBM. So they say that cyber criminals are outsiders. So this is a myth basically. So cyber criminals are outsiders, basically outsiders, but this is not the case, because cyber criminals can be anybody. So it could be from it could be something like the insider, or it could be outsider, or anybody. But definitely this cannot be only the job of the outsiders. And at the same time, the other myths are something like the risks are well known, and also the attack vectors are also contained. Now these are the myths, because cybersecurity is, if in case you visit the government website that is responsible for watching the cyber attack kind of cyber related issues, every day on a day-to-day basis they are publishing different types of vulnerabilities that exist in the different the softwares that we use. For example, it could be Android, or it could be the Windows operating machines. So every kind of issues that every kind of bugs or every kind of viruses that actually is found, they are on a every day basis they are publishing those kind of information. So therefore the risk and the attack vectors, they are not definitely known or not contained. This is something like very dynamic, and they keep changing. So therefore it's very difficult for us to say that it's contained. And there is another myth. So this is another myth, is saying that my industry is safe. So we cannot say my industry is safe and their industry is under attack. Nothing is safe, in fact. So every industry is vulnerable for the cyber attack. So therefore everyone has to take measures, everyone has to have some kind of policies in place in order to prevent maximum damage to the resources of a particular firm or organization. Recently, I think you would have heard or probably would have read in the newspaper, there is something called, or obviously, every time we hear about something called the ransomware kind of an attack. Recently, this kind of a ransomware attack was targeted to, usually it is targeted to financial institutions, but of late it's been targeted to healthcare sector, especially the hospitals. So hospitals contains too much of critical data of the patients, and it contains too many of health information. So recently, this particular ransomware attack was actually put in action to many of the healthcare sectors, and the healthcare sectors, in fact, were a kind of their records were actually kept on hold and so on. So they did have some kind of an issue with respect to ransomware attack. So therefore, this notion of my industry is safe from cybersecurity is definitely a kind of a definite myth. Now let's introduce to you something about what is called as the cybercrime. What exactly is a cybercrime? Now when we talk about the cybercrime, when we talk about the cybercrime, we live in a space, and this space is what we call as the cyberspace. Because when we talk about the cyberspace is basically, it's a virtual world that is created using computers, networks, and so on. So we are basically in what is known as the virtual space, and some people also call it as a cyberspace. And because of this, because of a lot of technological advancements, it's possible for us to get connected, and we know the advantage because being in Mysore, we can connect with people across the globe and have kind of communications. So that's what the cyberspace has provided us. It has its advantages, the advantage being the communication at very less cost, and at the same time it has its own disadvantages, and some people have actually exploited those disadvantages for their own benefits in committing some acts which we call as what is known as the cybercrime. And again, in addition to the cyberspace, we say that this cyberspace became so popular, and we are actually living in it. It's because of what is called as the information technology. Information technology is growing at a very rapid speed, and we see that the microprocessors, the chip, the speed of the microprocessor, it is doubling every 12 to 18 months, and also the storage. Storage were limited in olden days. For example, if we talk about something like 92, 95s, or maybe 2000, the storage was very limited. And today, the storage is increasing, phenomenally. So therefore, every 12 months, there is a lot of advancements in storage as well. And at the same time, when we talk about the internet, so there were times when people were using internet at the speed of something like in terms of kilobits per second, but today people are talking about megabits per second and so on. So every day basically you require the speed. So even the internet is the speed is also has become phenomenally very, very high. And all these things, it could be the speed of which the microprocessors have been developed, or it could be the storage, or it could be the internet or the bandwidth. All these things have become very, very affordable. So that pricing has made things very, very advantage, or it could be very competitive, so that everyone can afford devices, and those devices by itself can help you to be a part of what is called as the cyberspace. So you are virtually in the cyberspace because of the benefits the information technology is providing to you in terms of the speed, in terms of the microprocessor, the storage, and the internet speed, and all these things. And just talking about some of the statistics, India ranks something like the third in terms of the highest number of internet users in the world after USA and China. So we are the third in terms of internet users. And also we see that India secured something called a spot in the top 10 spam sending countries in the world along USA. So we know what exactly is spam. Spam is basically a message which we don't want to receive. Okay, something that's not something that I don't appreciate. Many a times, probably we receive calls, and probably if I receive calls, my friend, that would be good. But when I receive calls for something other than of my interest, so basically we treat something as the spam. So therefore, India secures a spot among the top 10 spam sending countries in the world along what is known as the USA. And also, India was ranked among the top 3 countries to be affected by what is called as the cybercrime. And again, there are some statistics again here that will help you to understand what exactly is the crime, cybercrime, what are the different types of cybercrime and so on. 50% of the organization, they reported that these are some of the top 5 causes of cybercrime, or top 5 cybercrime disruptions. And this statistics, again, in January 2020, there was an article that was published in Hindustan Times which says that this cybercrime, it registered 11.8% more last year compared to the previous. So that means you can see in 2017 it was 50%, but in 2021 every year there is an increase in what is known as the cyber attacks, or a cyber crime, or cyber disruptions. If you look at the top 5 causes for cyber disruptions, the first one is what we call as around 57% would be what is known as the phishing and social engineering. So that is one kind of an attack. The other, that is 41%, would be what is called as the malware kind of an attack, and the 30% would be something called as the spear phishing, and the 20% would be what is known as the denial of service kind of an attack, and the 19% would be would be because of outdated software use, ransomware, and so on. Okay, so this gives you an idea what are the top 5 kind of cyber disruptions that happened over the period of time. And believe me, so today this list would be an increased one, or would have definitely, there would be some new additions to this as well. So you have phishing, you have malware, and you have spear phishing, denial of service, outdated software, ransomware, and so on. So these are the 5 different types of cyber disruptions that that was reported in 2017. Okay, internet has, if you look at the way that we are living, internet has become a kind of battle form of life and living. So everybody is, everybody carries a device, and that device, implicitly or explicitly, they will be connected across the world. So we are actually connected across the world, and also we actually spend too much of time interacting with friends or family across the internet. Now, when we are in this situation, cybercrime is emerging as a very serious threat, and worldwide, the governments, the police departments, and the intelligence units, and many more, they have started to take a note at this kind of a pandemic, or you can call it this kind of an issue, and they have started to react to this kind of an issue. So cybercrime can be defined as cybercrime is defined as the crimes that are committed on the internet using computer as either a tool or a target. So basically, you use a computer to start an attack, and you would target a computer for an attack. So that's what it means. So you use computer as a tool or computer as a target. Now here we are using a general term called as computer. It could be your network, it could be your the cloud servers, it can be anything, but a general notion that is, that's mentioned here is a computer. So computer can be used as a tool and computer can be used as a target. Now, what are the basically the top 5 most cyber attack industries? Now, the top 5 cyber attack industries are, the first one is what we call as the healthcare. So healthcare sector, as we know, is a very it's a very important sector where we have health records, we have a lot of documents available about different across of many people visiting different hospitals as well as clinics and so on. So healthcare sector is one of the very important sector, and it is one of the top 5 attacked industry. So that is healthcare. And the second one is what we call as the manufacturing industry. Say for example, it could be the manufacturing of automobiles, say some car vendor, so suppose if somebody, for example, if there is a company called X, and if this company wants to produce a car or manufacture cars, so they have to rely on many, what is known as many chains or different outlets for different parts. So cyber security or cyber crime can be committed, wherein which the different outlets may not be communicated. So that means they can disrupt the communication flow of the different outlets, so thereby delaying the manufacturing process. So that's how the manufacturing industry can be affected. And then obviously we know about financial services. So financial services such as the banks or the RBI, or it could be the stock markets. So they are also very vulnerable for these kind of attacks. And again, most importantly is the government sectors. Many a times, we may have read in the newspaper that certain websites of the government have been vandalized or defaced. That means they have hacked the government websites, and then they have actually alter the contents on those particular websites. So those are some of the attacks that have taken place on the government side. And very importantly, transportation. So transportation in India now, there are many smart cities coming up. So smart cities means everything tends to be smart. The use of sensors, the use of IoT, Internet of Things. So very good example would be metro. So metro is a very important factor for providing transportation. And in Bangalore, for example, it has reduced the congestion to a very large extent. Now imagine some kind of a cyber attack that could take place on transportation, wherein which the speed of the metro can be reduced or increased to a level that is not acceptable, or that may cause harm. These are some of the areas that should be looked into, and obviously people are working in these areas in order to provide better cyber security. But nonetheless, these 5 remains the most top cyber attack industries. Now the next question is something like, why the crime happens? Why do the crime happens? And basically there are some reasons that crime happens. Now some of the reasons that people have documented or in the literature happens to be like this. For example, 42% of the cases is because of lack of knowledge with respect to a system. Say for example, when we buy a phone, when we buy a particular laptop, or when we buy a new device, and new device requires some kind of installations or configurations. And when somebody is not very thorough in the complete installation of that particular the system or software, many a times what we do is, in order to save time, we will cut short so many steps during the process of installation. And when we cut short those so many steps during the process of installation, those steps could be the vulnerable points. Those steps could be the weakness point that somebody can explore and somebody can actually affect your system. So many a times it is reported that misconfigured systems or applications can be
one of the very important reasons why cybercrime happens. So therefore 42% is a statistics that the author has quoted, saying that this is because 42% is because of these reasons. Then there is something called 6% is because of the code. Like for example, when we say code, what exactly is a code? Code is basically what? A code is something like any of the applications. When we talk about any of the applications, or any of the applications are basically written using the softwares, and software is basically nothing but a code. Either it could be written in C language or a C++ language or any language. So sometimes when people write codes, these codes can be vulnerable. These codes can be weak. Weak in the sense, how do you say it's weak? Because if that particular code is not tested, for all the conditions, so then we say that this particular code is weak. When this code is weak, so then such codes we call it as the vulnerable code. And these vulnerable codes can ultimately, can help the attackers to sneak in and cause damage to your system. And 31% is because of what is known as the end user error. End user error is 31% because it's the user who doesn't know how to use it properly. So when in such cases, 31% is because of the end users, and 6% is because of the targeted attack. So if somebody has determined that they want to attack a particular institution, organization, or a particular person, so they go different ways, and then they go on for a particular attack. So we say 6% is because of this reason, and then 15% is undetermined. We don't know why exactly, why this kind of things happen. Maybe some of the reason could be, some of the intellects, they want to probably showcase how good they are, in a different way. So therefore, they resort to these kind of crimes. We call them as probably hackers, or black hats. So many things. So what is the distinction between the conventional crime and a cyber crime? So apparently, when we talk about there is no distinction between crime. So there is crime is crime, but what could be a difference is there is a thin line of difference between the conventional and a cyber crime, and that is the involvement of the medium in the case of the cyber crime. Okay, so crime is a crime, but what is different in the case of the conventional and what is known as the cyber crime is the involvement of the medium. So probably these are some of the newspaper clippings that will help you to understand the seriousness of cybercrime. So every day you would have come across such clippings, but nonetheless, this article simply highlights that 4 months and 32 crores. So that means in 4 months 32 crores was either it would be robbed or stolen from different sources. And also, if you look at the newspaper very carefully, it says that 3,180 cases registered since mid-January. So that probably the last 2020 January. And also, if you look at this the newspaper article, it says that the cyber criminals, they keep trying. So they keep trying, and if you look at this article very carefully, Windows machine is the most attacked machine. So it says that 1985, that is 1985 attempts every minute. So every minute there are 1985 attempts being made on Windows machines, which is far higher than an Android machines. Okay, so this is one of the statistics that was given. And at the same time, in India, Mumbai faces the highest threat from cyber attacks, which makes Maharashtra the top list of Indian states vulnerable to risk. And also, if you look at the vulnerable states, as mentioned, Maharashtra remains the top, and then Delhi, West Bengal, Gujarat, and so on. Okay, so these are the different states. These are ranked as the most vulnerable states. And now talking about the cities, again Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, so they are in 1, 2, 3 as the most cities at risk to cybercrime. Now, what is the reasons for the cybercrime? Basically, the concept of law has said that human beings are vulnerable, so rule of law is required to protect them. So, applying this to cyberspace, we may say that the computers are vulnerable, so rule of law is required to protect and safeguard them against cybercrime. So, following are the reasons for vulnerability of computers. So, because the computers can store data, because the computers can be accessed easily, and sometimes the computers are very complex, we don't understand, and sometimes we can be negligent in handling computers, and most importantly, whenever cybercrime happens, we don't know exactly what do we do with evidences, or what exactly is evidence in the case of a cyber attack. Unlike the conventional evidence, unlike the conventional crime scene, where you know what exactly is an evidence, but when we talk about the cyber security, we are not aware of what exactly is evidence. So there may be chances of some of these evidences may be lost. So these things make the computers to be more vulnerable. Now, just talking about the cyber criminals. Following are some of the profiles of the cyber criminals, and of course, this can definitely change. But these are some of the an example of the profiles of cyber criminals. So it could be something like children and adolescents between the age group of 6 to 18 years, as reported in the literature. And it could be an organized set of people. Say, for example, you have a famous group such as the Anonymous, or it could be something like the Pakistan Cyber Army, or it could be something like the Chinese Hackers Army, and so on. So these are the organized groups. So you call them as organized hackers. So they can be also labeled as cyber criminals. And there could be somebody called as the professional people who actually, as I've mentioned, these people can actually be hired by different people, or it can call them as bad people, and they are paid to work for them, or they can also be used by different organizations or good organizations in order to just check whether the security solutions that they have designed actually is working or not. Okay, so in that case, in this case, they may not be criminals, but definitely the other side. That means the persons who are will be knowledgeable, and who is hired by a different set of people to cause harm. So they definitely fit into the profile of what is known as the cyber criminals. And most importantly, discontented employees. Many organizations, we have read in the newspaper, for example, case of call centers, that many of the call centers' data was actually leaked, and when the investigation happened, we know that it was an insider's job. So that means an employee was responsible for sharing a lot of customers' data or employees' data. So therefore, the criminals, the profile of the criminals can fit in any of these, and as well as others as well, which I probably have not mentioned here. Now, when we talk about the mode and manner of committing a cybercrime, what are the different modes and manners in which the cybercrimes can be committed? The first one is something called the unauthorized access to computers or networks. Then there is a theft of information collected in the electronic form. So then there is something called email bombing, data diddling, salami attacks, denial of service attacks, virus or worms attacks, Trojan attacks, web jacking. So these are different kinds of the cyber crimes. Now let's look at each one of them very carefully. So when we talk about something called the unauthorized access to computer systems or networks what exactly it means? It means you are actually gaining access to a particular website or a particular server or a machine unlawfully. So that means probably you are you're getting into it through unlawful means. It could be through the password or username and password that you have obtained, or obtained in a different way. For example, it could be by tricking somebody, or through, or it could be stolen from somebody. So then trying to access them, or it could be something like, you conduct some kind of repeated test and then discover a particular username and password, and then try to gain access into those systems. And today, mobile phones and smartphones have become the latest, latest and the most targeted kind of a system. And one of the examples that I can quote here is in Mumbai. So this particular clipping, this particular example appeared in the one of the local newspaper. This event happened in 2007 in Mumbai, when the government of Maharashtra website was hacked by an unknown persons. So basically, this is somebody trying, when they say hacked by unknown person, what does it mean? Is somebody actually exploiting the weakness of a particular machine, getting into it, and then changing the content of that particular the service, or changing the content of that particular website or web page, is what we call as unauthorized access to computer systems or networks. Then you have something called the theft of information connected in the electronic form. This theft can be committed by the internal or the external members. Say for example, in 2013 and 2014, Yahoo announced that it was a victim of one of the most biggest data breaches in history. So something around 500 million users, data was compromised. Similarly, in 2016, Uber, they disclosed that around 57 million Uber users' personal information, along with 600,000 drivers' information was stolen. So this is something like, this is what is classified into what is known as the information theft. Then there is something called the email bombing. So when I say email bombing, what exactly it means? It means, email bombing refers to sending of too much of email than a particular email server can handle. So just to give one example, this particular example was reported in the newspaper, and it's a case of what is known as a foreigner and the Simla Housing Board. So the case so happened that a foreigner who came to India, and he settled in Simla because he found the particular place very wonderful and beautiful. So he settled in India, in Simla, and then he wanted to purchase what is known as a land or a property. Just because he was a foreigner, and he sent his application to the Simla Housing Board, and the Housing Board had to reject his application because he was a foreigner. And he actually became agitated, and he was so frustrated that he started sending too much of emails to the Simla Housing Board email servers. Ultimately, what happens is the email server crashed, and it took some time for people to understand what happened, and finally, all the fingers were crossed to this particular, was pointed to this particular foreigner. So that's how email bombing can be used. So email bombing can disrupt. In simple words, email bombing refers to sending of too much of emails than a particular server can handle, and then rendering that particular server non-responsive. So that is what we call as email bombing. Then you have something called the data diddling. What exactly is a data diddling? Data diddling is something like, this kind of an attack basically involves altering the raw data. So basically altering the raw data before it is actually processed by the computer, and then changing it back after the processing is completed. Usually this, electricity boards in India was the victims of such a data diddling kind of an act. And it is observed, or it was reported, that huge amounts of data or huge amount of funds were manipulated in the data files and show less receipt and bank remittance. So this kind of an attack is what we call as the data diddling. Then you have something called the denial of service attack. Now, denial of service attack is something like, sending of too many requests than a server can handle. Just to give an example, the Amazon and the Flipkart, they conduct something called the Big Billion Day and so on. They have some kind of a festival where they offer the items at a very discounted price. Now, usually what happens, if you have read the newspaper in the last 5 years, when this offer was made public for the very first time, so what happened is too many people tried to access that particular Amazon or Flipkart servers. As a result, what happened is the server was not able to accept too many requests, and immediately it crashed. When I say it crashed, what happened is it became non-responsive. So that means it became non-responsive whenever you give a request and it was not replying. So that is what I say, non-responsive. So denial of service attack can be made to make a system non-responsive. Now this denial of service can also be can take a different form, and that different form is what we call as the distributed denial of service attack. So when you say distributed denial of service attack, so this kind of message or this kind of request, it does not come from a particular a country. So it comes from different machines scattered across the globe. So it is distributed across the globe, and they can coordinate their attack on a particular server. So that can be really deadly in bringing a particular system down. So this is what we call as the denial of service attack, and its variant known as what is known as the distributed denial of service kind of an attack. Now, denial of service attack, recently it did bring down websites like, for example, Amazon, CNN, Yahoo. All these websites have also undergone something like these kind of an attack. Then there is something called the salami attack. This salami attack is a wonderful and a kind of a tricky kind of an attack, where what happens here is this usually happens with respect to the financial. It's a financial kind of a crime. Now what happens in this financial crime is that most of our transaction today, financial transaction, is through bank, and now the banks have employed computers or softwares to manage all their services. Now just imagine, like for example, if somebody in the bank changes the code, okay, what kind of code would they change? Like for example, if they say that every month, in the beginning of every month, deduct something like 5 rupees from every account. Deduct 5 rupees from every account. Now usually why beginning of every month? Because beginning of every month we need to pay something like the EMIs or installments. Would have purchased something, and we would have been, every month, beginning of every month, we have to pay installments. Now if somebody in the bank would write or would tweak the code such that from every account deduct 5 rupees and then put it to some other account. So what happens is, in the beginning of every month, 5 rupees would be deducted from every account, and that would be transferred to some other account. And we would not be noticing that as well. Why? Because today the banks are charging so many transaction charges. For example, the SMS charges, the transaction charges, and I may get an SMS saying that 5 rupees is deducted. So what I do is, I may think that this 5 rupees would be a transaction charge, and I would keep quiet. But ultimately this is done by somebody, and that somebody would be from the bank. So what he would do is, he would tweak the code and deduct 5 rupees from every account and transfer it to some account. And just imagine, number of accounts and 5 rupees, it will be a very, very, very big amount at the end of the day. So this kind of an attack is what we call as the salami attack. Then you have something called the virus or the worm attack. Now when we say virus, I think most of us know, and today we have COVID, so we know much better what exactly is a virus. So viruses are something that will attack or that will attach themselves to a computer or a system, and they will circulate themselves to other files and other computers on the network, and they usually affect data on a computer, and they either delete the data, or they try to alter the data. So that's how they do it. And similarly, you have something called the worm. What exactly is a worm? Worm is again a deadlier one. Whenever this worm infects a particular system, what happens is this worm creates multiple copies, and when they create multiple copies, at the same time the resources, what are resources? The storage and the processing time, they get used, and ultimately what happens is sooner or later your system becomes non-functional. So this is what is known as the worms, the viruses and the worm attack. A popular example of this virus or worm attack would be called as, the I Love You virus that was released, and then there is something called the ransomware kind of a virus. Then there is something called the Trojan. So Trojan is very important, and many of us would get this kind of Trojan, especially using mails, because whenever we receive a mail and they say this mail is sent by somebody, and finally you have an attachment, and that attachment contains some, say for example some funds. So usually these kind of Trojans are basically unauthorized programs, and it looks as a normal program, but they would be having something like an unauthorized program inside it that can actually do some kind of a damage. Like, to give an example of Trojan, say for example there were two friends. Again, this example was reported in one of the newspaper, and there was some police investigation happening on this particular example, so I just took this example. In this case, what happens is there were two friends, say for example Rahul and Mukesh. I've just changed the names. They had they were two friends, and they had an argument over one particular girl. So, and both of them were in love with that particular girl, and they had an argument over that particular girl. Now, at least one should win that particular battle. So what one did is, he gave, because they were friends. When they are friends, they exchange a lot of things, and when they exchange a lot of things, they exchange the pen drive as well. So one of the friend gave the pen drive to another friend. Another friend put that pen drive in his system, and immediately when he put it system, so there was a program that got installed in that particular system. And whenever whenever the friend typed something, it captured the username and password. So when it captured the username and password, that username and password, now it became known to the other friend, and the other friend used the username and password and sent obscene messages and obscene things from the other person's account. So you can just imagine what these things can do. Then there is something called webjacking. Webjacking is also a kind of an attack. What is webjacking? We are familiar with something called carjacking. What is carjacking? Carjacking is basically when we are traveling in a car and somebody comes, comes in the middle and probably shows a gun, and probably after showing a gun, he takes away our car, and he takes away car and then commits some kind of an crime, and ultimately police will come after the owners. So that is what we call as a carjacking. Now very similarly, we have something called webjacking. What is webjacking? Webjacking is basically, you have a website, and when we say website belongs to a particular owner or an organization. But when somebody takes control of that particular website and tries to put or publishes something irrelevant, so then what happens is, that is what we call as webjacking. So ultimately, when something is not good, when something is published and something that is published that is not correct or wrongful, then the ownership, who will be the owner? The owner will be the person who is actually the owner under whom the website would be registered. But that website would be taken care or would be taken control by somebody. So that is what we call as the webjacking. To just give an example, this particular example was reported in one of the articles reported in US. Now in US what happens is, like they have a system. They have something called the play home, concept of play home, kindergarten. So usually, the children are put in school, and when they come out of the school, what they do is they have to complete some assignments. And the assignments are put in the website because they are little advanced. So whatever contents or whatever assignments that students have to complete, because there is no writing in the class. So whatever they have to do by looking at the website, and they have to do it at home. So what happened is, that this is a very famous preschool or a kindergarten across US. So their website was actually hacked by somebody, and they got into that website, and then they demanded some money from the owners of the play school. And the owners thought it is a kind of a prank, and they did not actually, pay anything. But after some time, sooner or later what happened is, those people, they started to change the contents of the website. And then the matter became very serious, because in one of the assignment, it was said that the children should be playing with, say for example, clay. Now, instead of changing is children should be playing with clay, they changed that children should be playing with piranha. So piranha is basically a kind of fish, and children should be kept out of it. So this led to some kind of an event, and that event was very, very unpleasant, and therefore a lot of things happened there. So this is what can happen if somebody takes over a website. Okay, so this is what we call as a webjacking. In addition to it, there are, like for example, the online gambling. There are intellectual property crimes. For example, somebody stealing the softwares, somebody stealing the what is known as the trademarks, and so on. And then there is something called email spoofing. Email spoofing is something like somebody disguising somebody. Like for example, if I am Anil KM, so Anil KM at sjc.ac.in, somebody can pretend Anil KM at yahoo.com. So when somebody receives Anil KM at yahoo.com, so naturally my friends think that this particular mail would be from Anil, because it's Anil KM. So therefore, people can pretend to be somebody and try to send messages. So this is also called as email spoofing, and then the forgery of documents and so on. There is also called as cyber defamation. So when we say cyber defamation, when someone publishes defamatory matter about somebody on the websites, or send emails containing defamatory information to all the persons or friend, we call them as something called cyber defamation. And then there is something called the cyber stalking. We know what exactly is physical stalking. Physical stalking is somebody trying to follow you wherever you go. But when we talk about cyber stalking is somebody following you virtually online 24/7. So that is what we call as cyber stalking. And probably, if in case you have read the newspapers, many of the film stars and film actresses, so they have reported something called cyber stalking, and a complaint was registered because they felt that some individuals were actually stalking them in the virtual space. Then there is something called the internet theft. So when we talk about internet theft, see today everybody uses mobile phones, everybody uses some kind of internet at home. So we get this connection by using, by paying money. So therefore, either we say we pay 2,000 rupees for a particular service, or 2,000 rupees pack, whatever. But when we pay 2,000 and we know for sure that every day we have some kind of a limit. Say for example, we have something like 2 GB limit or 3 GB limit, or maximum something like 300 GB. But if somebody somehow accidentally discovers my username and password and then consumes all my the bandwidth, ultimately what happens is my 2,000 rupees is lost. So that means 2,000 worth internet connection is lost. So this is what we call as the internet time theft. So this happens usually when we use internet connection at home, and when the username and password is not secure. So then what happens is, probably the neighbors or somebody in the roadside, they can get into my system, and once they use my system, so they can consume the bandwidth. Okay, so this is what we call as the internet, the bandwidth theft. Now, after just going through the types of the cyber crimes, let's talk about like the classification of cybercrime. Cybercrime can be classified under 3 groups. One, it could be against individuals, it could be person, or it could be property of an individual, or it could be against an organization, it could be something like government, or it could be a company, or it could be a group of individuals, or it could be against what is known as the society in general. Now when we talk about something like individuals, what kind of cyber crime can be against individuals? It could be something like harassment using emails, cyber stalking, sending of obscene materials, defamation, unauthorized control or access over computer systems, indecent exposure, email spoofing, cheating and fraud. So these are what is known as the kind of acts against an individual. Similarly, against an individual property, when we talk about property, it could be computer vandalism. So somebody actually intruding your system and then making it non-functional, non-responsive, and then transmitting viruses, and net trespassing, and then unauthorized control or access over computer systems. Then you have something called the intellectual property crimes. Then you have something called the internet theft crimes, and so on. Now when we talk about the against the organization, again it could be unauthorized access to their systems within the organization, and possession of unauthorized information, so for example stealing of user information or data about the client, customers and so on. Or it could be something like the cyber terrorism, and it could be something like distribution of the pirated softwares and so on. So this could be something like a kind of crime that could be committed against the organization. Now when we talk about the crime that could be committed at large, the society, it could be something like pornography, basically child pornography, then indecent exposures, then you talk about something called the human trafficking, then financial crimes, sale of illegal articles, now with the a lot of developments taking place in the form of dark web, and then you have something called the online gambling, then you have forgeries and so on. So this is something like a kind of crime that is committed against society at large. Now let's take some of the case studies. Probably I'll try to give you some of the case studies that will help you to understand some of these crimes, and some of these are also very well known, because every now and then we would be receiving emails or we would be receiving calls which will help us to understand where exactly they fit in and what kind of the crime they are. Now the first one is what we call as the phishing kind of an attack. Now just to give an example, Sukhwinder Singh can never forget the day he actually he checked his account online last October. So Sukhwinder Singh is basically a person, he checked his account online, and the account simply says that it shows that there is a deduction of 41,000, and he has no clue how this 41,000 actually was lost. So investigation revealed that this money was transferred to somebody called as Harpreet in Delhi. So how does this happen? This happened because he had given his username and password online by replying to somebody to an email that was sent by the hackers. For example, many of us would receive an email of this nature. We would receive, it looks so genuine. For example, if you look at the logo and all, it looks so genuine that we assume that this particular email would be from Gmail. But this is a kind of attack we call as a phishing attack, where the look and feel would be from a genuine site, and at the same time they would have given a link, and that clicking of that particular link will transfer you to a different site, and that different site will ask you to enter your username and password for proceeding further. So once you enter your username and password to proceed further, so that's it. So what happens is you have actually lost your username and password, and you have succumbed to what is known as the phishing kind of an attack. Also, we see very similar sites. If you look at this particular site, its look and feel is very similar to Amazon, but it's not an exactly Amazon site. But if you feel that this is an Amazon site and enter the username and password, that is your email and password, so you would lose your email and password. Because if you observe very carefully the domain name, so domain name is basically highlighted in the box. So it says that Amazon.com, instead of having a single N, it has what is known as the spoofed Amazon. So it has a double N. But if somebody does not notice this and enters the credentials, email and password, so they would lose their username and password in addition to the data that's contained. Similarly, if in case, if you have, I don't know, maybe around 2007, there was a report in major newspaper about ICICI. There was something called the spoofed. When I say spoofed, what does it mean? Somebody disguising as somebody. So there was a spoofed website of ICICI. The look and feel of ICICI was very, very similar. And when people explored it, they found out that this was a spoofed website, and ultimately there was a lot of efforts done by the genuine ICICI to get this off from online by lodging complaints and so on. And similarly, recently or every visit, whenever we visit many of the websites, we come across these kind of advertisements. Flipkart, Facebook, official, all these kind of websites. Now these websites are basically scam websites. They entice you to enter your username and password, and once you are done, so they steal the username and password, and then they use this for their own advantage. The second kind of an attack, the second kind of a case that I want to talk is basically credit cards, kind of a credit card scam fraud. Now this was again one of the case that was reported in the newspaper, where it says that three people were actually held guilty for some kind of an online credit card scam by Cyber Crime Investigation Cell Pune. And they say that these people approximately misuse details of 100 people through online means for booking air tickets. Now everybody actually try to book tickets using online. Now what these three people created is, they created a very similar looking PayPal website. So when they created very similar looking PayPal website, naturally people like me who wants to book some kind of an air ticket. So what we do is we use this site to pay and enter user information or credit card information. So when those people did, they actually entered the username and password of the credit card to a wrong website, and they lost the money. So this was one of the credit card scam fraud that was detected. Similarly, you must have received many SMSs, or probably must have received many messages in your inbox saying that your card is blocked, your credit card is blocked. In order to revive it, you need to call or this number or click on this particular number. So you would be coming across these kind of messages, and all these messages are nothing but scams. Then you have something called the SMS scam. Now there is something called the SMS scam. Now in this case, the mastermind. So this mastermind, he actually was responsible for something called 400 million SMS fraud that actually he duped at least 50,000 people, and he was arrested after 2 months. Now how this logic worked is, he would place an advertisement in the leading newspapers and send SMSs in which he says interested subscribers were asked to deposit 500 rupees, and the mastermind claimed that he is working with a US company, and where the company wanted to market certain items to the client through SMSs. So probably this is called as SMS marketing. And in return what he said is, he said that he would pay something like 10,000 rupees for 16 months. So the investment is how much? The investment is basically 500 rupees. And what is he expect? What is he returning? He's returning something like 10,000 rupees. 10,000 rupees for 16 months. So everybody would be actually get attracted to it, and they would deposit 500 rupees. So just imagine 500 rupees by many. So sooner or later, this person he actually fled with this money, and then ultimately he was caught. So probably you would come across many advertisements in the newspaper, even in good newspapers, saying that earn SMS money and so on. So this is a kind of SMS scam that's happening, rampantly happening. Similarly, there are some messages that we would receive from in the mobile phones, asking us to confirm and so on. Then you have something called work from home scams. Now again, this is again a kind of a scam that is reported in the newspaper, and one of the incidents that was reported is basically the cybercrime cell in Mumbai arrested a person, and he was proclaiming that he was a chairman and managing director of some particular private firm, and many of them they have given a complaint saying that the company actually duped them of something like rupees 4,000 and 6,000 by promising them a monthly income of something like 15,000. So your investment is something like 4,000, and then your monthly income is something like 15,000. So many of them they went and complained regarding this kind of what is known as the fraud. So probably you might have come across these kind of things in the websites, web articles, where they post messages saying that earn rupees 800 on a daily basis and so on. So these are a kind of scams that is quite rampant. Similarly, if in case even in the leading newspaper articles, websites, these kind of advertisements are posted. So these kind of advertisements, again, they are also some kind of scams, in which one has to exercise caution whenever they want to explore what exactly these kind of work from home opportunities are. Then there is something called cyber extortion. Again, there was a case that was reported in the newspaper in which a police arrested a 27-year-old man for cheating a Mumbai-based engineer through internet, posing as a woman, and stealing from his bank account. So this is again what is known as an example of cyber extortion. And there is another case in which a 51-year-old person, he was actually working in a very good firm, but he was arrested for posing as a woman and then seducing a person from Abu Dhabi, and according to the reports, he has actually extorted 96 lakhs from him. So this is some kind of the amount of money that this person has extorted. And also we have probably seen or we have heard that we would receive random messages in our email box which says that there is a bomb and you need to pay money and all those. These kind of things are also called as cyber extortion. These could be some kind of an example of cyber extortion. Then there is something called the sextortion. So usually somebody has, for example, if you look at this particular example, it says that I have your pictures, I want to show it to the whole school, or if in case you pay some money I can change my mind. So this kind of things are what we call as sextortion. So this is also a kind of the kind of crime that's there. Then there is something called the international job racket. So international job racket, we are all very familiar. Recently, Nigerian nationals were arrested because they said that they published these particular jobs opportunities in leading newspapers, and they wanted people to deposit some money, and once they deposit money, they never contacted the depositors. Very similarly, again, international job rackets, very similar. And then coming on to something called the social media. Now, when we talk about the social media is a big thing. Now today people are talking about too many things. Social media, and everybody is on social media. For example, they are talking about being present in the Facebook, Instagram, and different platforms. Now when we talk about this social media, there is always a danger of what is called as the cyberbullying. And there is other dangers, like for example cyber identity theft, because today you would notice that if in case you are present in the Facebook, you would send, or probably you would receive many requests from Amir Khan or Shah Rukh Khan or somebody, because people will post themselves as Shah Rukh Khan or Amir Khan and then send request. So we don't know who exactly who. So therefore there is something called the identity impersonation, and then dissemination of pornographic materials. and then fraud, so on. So these are very rampant in what is known as these social media. Now I would just probably start from here, a very important topic called as cyberbullying, because cyberbullying is a very important topic I want to address here, because as the youngsters probably are entering the university, or at the same time every youngsters today, it's not only the people entering or students entering the university, most of the kids actually they are attending classes online, and they have this exposure to what is known as the mobile phones. So therefore when they are exposed to mobile phones, there is a constant threat of what is called as cyberbullying. Now let's understand, I just want to spend some time in giving some insights into what exactly is bullying and what exactly is cyberbullying. Now when we talk about bullying, what exactly is a bullying? So if you look at the definition of bullying, it is the use of force, threat or coercion to abuse, intimidate or aggressively dominate others. This behavior is often repeated and habitual. So that is what is called as bullying. So always a use of force and abuse, intimidate others and have some kind of aggressive dominance. So this is what we call as bullying. Now the question is, where exactly the bullying occurs? Now bullying can occur everywhere, anywhere for example. It can occur everywhere and anywhere. For example, if you take a family, an elderly woman is threatened verbally by her son with whom she lives, and she is afraid for her safety, and she does not report. Why she does not report? Because of honor or family prestige, family issue, whatever it is, and because of the tie, family tie that binds her. So this can happen at family. This can happen in the college. Say for example, a girl announces that her boyfriend was stolen by somebody. Usually this kind of things happen in the college. So then what does this girl do? She turns everybody against that particular girl. So that's a kind of bullying. Then it could happen at the neighborhood. Say for example, a neighbor is regularly insulted by the others because of different reasons, because of their origin, because of their skin color, because of their caste, because of their creed, and so on. So this could happen in the neighborhood. Now, what exactly is the effects of bullying? When we talk about the effects of bullying, depression and anxiety is the major effect. And also increase in feeling of sadness and loneliness, changes in the sleep and eating patterns, loss of interest in activities they enjoy the most. And on top of it, health issues are always there. In addition to it, we see that decreased academic achievements. So a student who was undergoing bullying, so probably we see that there is a decreased academic achievement and more likely to miss classes, skip classes, college, work. And in US especially, 12 out of 15 school shootings that has happened since 1990, most of these shooters had an history of being bullied. So they were actually subjected to bullying, and because of the frustration, they did something like the shooting at the school. Now, when we look at the when we know what exactly is bullying and the kind of effect it can have on a person being bullied, let's look at the feature of a bullying victim. What does a victim look like? The victim will always have some kind of injuries, unexplainable injuries, and he would have something like a lost or destroyed clothing or books or jewelry. Frequently complains about headaches, stomach aches, and fake sometimes illnesses, changes in eating habits, suddenly skips meals or goes on eating too much, we call as a binge eating. Difficulties in sleeping and frequently suffers from nightmares, obviously declining grades and sudden loss of friends, or tries to avoid friends and families in social gatherings, feelings of helplessness and obviously low self-esteem. And then sometimes if attentions are not paid, they can also can harm themselves. They can also harm themselves by running away from them, running away from home, or even thinking to an extreme such as suicide. Now when we talk about the victim, now let's talk about the bully, the one who actually is, is more aggressive. So he gets into the physical fights, verbal fights. Bully has always friends, always aggressive, always sent out of classes or work because of his behavior. And sometimes, he has money that we cannot have an explanation. Always blames other for their problems and does not accept any kind of responsibilities. Bullying can happen with respect to race, religion, and so on. It could be also with respect to disabilities. For example, if a student or a person is suffering from autism, stammering, so bullying can also, be targeted towards them. Now, if you talk about I spoke about something like bullying, but now let's try to understand what is cyberbullying. When we talk about cyberbullying, internet has become a very important part of our life, and a lot of data is generated, and technology has helped us to be part of the cyberspace, and that's where cyberbullying is coming into picture. What makes cyberbullying more damaging is, the bully can be completely anonymous. Whereas in the case of bullying, physical bullying, you know the person. But in the case of cyberbullying, you don't know the person actually, because he becomes a faceless person. So he can remain completely anonymous. So this can make cyberbullying a very, very lethal, or it could be it can bring very complete damage to a particular person. So there have been number of experiences, life-threatening experiences. For example, just to give you some examples or case studies. Jessica was a particular college girl who committed suicide after sending some kind of a nude photo of herself to her boyfriend. When they broke up, what happened is the boyfriend shared that particular photo to everybody, and eventually she committed suicide. So that is one kind of a case. Then there is something called, there's another case where a Facebook user says that two people who are female, they are putting all kinds of information about this particular person in their Facebook wall. And Facebook apparently is not doing anything. Now, if you remember, a lot of governments are taking actions on these big platforms because they have to own all these kind of data. For example, if you post anything, Facebook will also be held responsible for allowing you to post such things. So therefore, this case too, here a woman is complaining about two people posting nasty things about a particular person. So this is also one of the example. Then there is another case. In this case, the Twitter. A small boy is stating that someone is trying to say that you either shut up or I will kill you. That means don't post any messages, otherwise I'll kill you. So these kind of also messages have been put across in the Twitter websites. So what exactly is cyberbullying then? After understanding all these contexts, what exactly is cyberbullying? It's basically an aggressive, intentional act carried by a group or an individual using electronic form of contact repeatedly and over time against a victim who cannot defend himself or herself. So this is in the electronic form. And we know any act of bullying is condemnable. However, cyberbullying is more because, as I've told you earlier, the person can remain completely anonymous. So when we talk about cyberbullying has three important main features. One, an aggression online. Two, imbalance of power between the individuals involved. So when I say imbalance power, because somebody would be technically very strong and the victim may not be technically strong. So there is imbalance of power, and this can happen over time. And this cyberbullying can happen directly or indirectly. When I say directly, directly can be sending virus infected file or excluding somebody from a online group, insulting and threatening. Indirectly, Say for example, publishing confidential information, spreading gossip, creating a hate page on social networking sites, and so on. Now, according to a survey that was published, 43% of kids have been bullied online, and 1 in 4 have said that it has happened more than once. 70% of students say that these kind of bullyings are happening frequently. And 80% of the teens say that they use cell phones, and when they are using cell phones, this becomes a common medium for what is known as the cyberbullying. And then you have something called 81%. 81% of the people think bullying is easier to get away with than bullying in person. So that is one of the major differences. And then you have something called
questions are there. Questions are there for you. 4 questions are there. You pose one.
Okay.
I think you can answer that.
You want me to wind up now?
Even that's a padiyam ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ
ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು.
Everybody is outside.
ಯಾರು meeting?
Nandane is there. We actually called after 4 o'clock because of delay in the
Okay. So 90% of the teens who have seen social media bullying say they have ignored it. 84% have seen others tell cyberbullies to stop, and only 1 in 10 victims will inform the parents or trusted adults about the abuse. Okay, I'm just skipping a few slides because because of time. I'll just skip a few things here. Okay, just going quickly to the feature of a bullying victim. Unexpectedly stops using devices, appears to be nervous and jumpy when using devices, appears to be uneasy being at school, appears to be angry or depressed, frustrated after texting or chatting using social media or gaming, and avoids discussion about activities online. The features of bullying: quickly switches the screen or hides the devices, uses their devices at all hours of night, and usually gets upset and if they can't use the devices, and avoids discussion about what they are doing online, and uses multiple online accounts. Now, okay, so how do we stop this cyberbullying? The first thing is, do not respond or retaliate. Keep the evidence safe. Evidence in the form of the screenshots, the URLs, and any kind of images that has been sent should be saved. Reach out for help. Use technology. Protect your account safely, and keep your social profile and interaction safe. Be always mindful when you actually post. Think about who sees what post online. Do not open emails and attachments from unknown sources. And most importantly, stop downloading free softwares and use of illegal softwares. Okay, just to conclude, prevention of cyber crimes. To prevent cyber stalking, avoid any kind of information from being disclosed. Avoid sending of any photographs online to strangers. Always use updated antivirus softwares, and always make a habit to have a backup of data frequently, so that if some data is affected, you always have the other data that you can always, that means a copy of the data is always available. Never send your credit card numbers to any site and guard against frauds. Keep your children, just watch your children and students and others from trying to know what exactly they are accessing, and always ensure have some kind of antivirus programs so that they can take care of cookies and other informations. Again, website owners should watch traffic and check any irregularity on websites, and if the organizations should use what is known as the firewalls to prevent some kind of attacks. And again, if you are using web servers should be separate from the internal and external networks, and always operating systems should be updated, and updated antivirus and anti-spyware should be used. and pop-up advertising blockers should be used to prevent any kind of advertisements that do come in, and always recommended to use something called the strong passwords. And whenever there is wireless networks, make sure that you use a secure wireless network rather than the open wireless network, and always make sure that you go with the reputable websites and mobile application, and most importantly, avoid clicking off any unexpected or unfamiliar links. Okay, so there are some helps available. For example, Government of India, they have started something called the Cyber Dost, and where the Cyber Dost is a platform either in Facebook, Twitter, that will help people with cyber related issues. There are also a few NGOs that are there. For example, you have something called Cyber Safe India and Cyber Crime Awareness Society and Cyber Peace, all working in the area of cyber security. Okay, just to conclude, because of paucity of time, so I have read through a few slides at the end, but just to conclude, Internet has enabled us what is known as interconnection of people and resources that are beneficial to society in many ways. At the same time, it has opened a virtual world for people to carry out their activities and be anonymous. Every day there has been different forms of issues faced by cyber world. It has resulted in losses, both life and property, to individuals, organizations and governments. So therefore there is a continuous need to work to address the issues related to cybercrime and cyber threats through research development, government policies, collaboration with industries and governments, training, and societal outreach programs. Okay, so thank you.
So there are some questions from student side. First question, it goes like this: how to keep our phone pay safe or other financial apps safe?
Now, how to keep our not only phone pays or financial data safe? That's the first question. Always make sure that you download the apps or applications from verified sources. For example, if you are downloading from Google Play Store, so Google Play Store makes sure that some of the, they have some different levels of acceptance, so they go through the different levels of acceptance, but at the same time there are different trusted sources that needs to validate the app or application. You need to look at what are the applications available and who are the different validators who validated those applications before you actually download them.
So next question by Yashwant E section: how will we get to know that our device is assessed or hacked?
Now there are many different, just like when you get fever, you have different symptoms. Like for example, you start with a cold, then you have a sore throat. Very similarly, when your system is hacked, naturally what happens is your system becomes slow, and ultimately if you look at too many processes in your system gets consumed without your knowledge, because you probably would have started one application, but in the background there are too many applications that get started. So all this gives you an idea that your system is running slow, and this gives you an idea that something is wrong and you need to run an antivirus quickly, to just like a scan that we take. You need to run an antivirus scan to get the health of your system.
So next question from Bhargava IP. Sir, why is cybercrime has occurred regularly, as sir said, 3 attempts?
Now cybercrime is something like, you mean to say something like, why does cybercrime happens frequently?
Yes, sir.
Cybercrime
occurred regularly, as sir said, 3 attempts.
Yeah, cybercrime occurs. I think there are two questions. There are two parts of the question here. One is, why does cybercrime occur frequently? Yeah, because that's how, as when technology evolves, there are that's the other side of the technology. That's one. Why 3 attempts? Because 3 attempts will give you an idea that somebody is trying to access your system illegally. So that's how it is. It's a threshold that is set by different institutes or financial organizations just to ensure that somebody is trying to break in or access your particular system.
So next question is, how to avoid or identify phishing attacks?
How to identify phishing attacks? There are various metrics that are used. Like for example, you need to, there are again, there are different URLs, there are different techniques that are available that you need to use. One of the common techniques that you can use is look at the URL very carefully. Most of the URLs, say for example, it starts from http:// and all that. And look at the username. In one of the slides I showed you that Amazon or Amazon, it has a double N. So you need to pay attention to small things to understand whether this site is genuine or a spoofed. And when it comes to phishing, always never respond to anything that you think is not come from a genuine source.
So next question is, sir, can my phone or laptop be hacked if my Wi-Fi connection is turned off?
Wi-Fi, yes, there are other ways, like for example Bluetooth. Yeah, people can exploit Bluetooth and other means to still get into your system.
I need to know about internet security works like Casper, Sky and many others. Do they keep us safe?
It all depends how you use it, because applications, for example, even when you are using Gmail, there are some, Gmail allows you to attach downloads, attachments. So it depends on what kind of attachment you would actually want to. Even though Gmail will help you to restrict attaching certain files, but again, at the end of the day, it only depends on you what kind of attachments you want to use and send it. So based on, it's all your decision that makes or keeps your phone or your system safe.
Yes, the last question, sir. Which is the best OS for cyber security and penetration testing from H1 E-sections?
The best is, I think, any open source operating system would be the best one.
That is
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, thank you very much, sir, for the information you have delivered to us regarding the cyber security. Once again, I thank you on behalf of SJC, JSS Science and Technology University and Organizing Committee, Student Induction Program. I thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. As we requested in the first instance.
Madam, ಇದು close ಮಾಡಿ.
Sir,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Very informative.
Now usually we want a job. ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಾವು ಏನೋ ಮಾಡಿ ಏನೋ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ.
ಇದು ನಾನು ಬಿಟ್ಟಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್
ಹಾಂ ಸರ್, ಇಲ್ಲಿ